let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. And let's talk a little bit about informative speaking. So, question, what does it mean to inform someone?
To let them know about a subject or to teach them.
Okay, let them know about a subject or teach them. Okay, what else?
Communicating something.
Okay, communicating something, yes. Don't be afraid to talk. This is speech class. All right, what else? Think about it. What does it mean to inform? Okay, I'll let you off the hook.
Provide knowledge.
To provide, okay, provide knowledge. Thank you so much. So far, so good. All righty, let's talk a little bit about informative speaking. So we're going to look at a few things today. We're going to look at informative versus persuasive, types of speaking, informative speaking techniques, and the organization and structure of informative speaking. So once we finish this, we're going to look at how to put together your outline. And I will put out in Canvas tonight the directions for uploading everything like I did for Jahari's window. I take it that helped you guys a lot when I did that for Jahari's window. So I'll do that for all your assignments. All righty, let's get started. So informative speeches are considered non-controversial in that, not that you can't talk about controversial topics, but your job, your primary responsibility is to inform, enlighten, to give new knowledge to your audience, not trying to persuade them to believe one thing over another. Okay? You're just trying to do what you're doing is you're giving the good, the bad, the ugly, and the indifferent when it comes to your particular type of speeches. So these types of speeches are not intended to change your audience's attitudes, beliefs, or values. Okay, they're just there to inform. But here's the rub. Whenever you add new information to the body, what happens? Change. Because anytime I introduce new information, you become more enlightened. And to become more enlightened, guess what happens? Change shows up. It's an outcropping of new information. But it's not the primary reason that we give informative speeches. Okay? Hold on, we got some more people coming in. Okay. Now, here we go. Oh, come on. There we are. Now, there are different types of informative speeches. All right. You have by content, by purpose, by objects, procedures, people, events, ideas. All of these are different types of informative speeches. And here's the thing, when it comes to these types of speeches, you don't have to worry about standing flat-footed in one particular type of speech. These speeches overlap and they run hand in hand. Because you can do a speech by content for the purpose of discussing objects whose procedures were developed by people for an event based on an idea. See how that works? So now let's pull these apart and look at what we have. So if you're dealing with speech by content, you're looking at objects, processes, events, concepts. Now your concepts are these intangible ideas that we understand. We understand these principles, we understand these beliefs, but I can't give them to you. I can't sit there and say, here, hold on to this belief. I can discuss it with you, or I can give you a theory or a type of principle, and I can give you the basis of it, and you go, oh, I get it. I understand now. So when you talk about the intangible part or your concepts, that's just that piece where I can discuss it, but I cannot physically give it to you. Next, you have your speeches based on what? Description, explanations, and instructions. So these are your how-to speeches, your demonstration speeches. How many of you, by voicing, because I'm in my PowerPoint, watch DIY or HGTV or Food Network or the Cooking Channel. All of those particular types of shows deal with descriptions, explanations, and instructions as to how to do something. So if you're describing a particular object or whatever you're doing, you're also explaining to the audience how it works and giving instructions on how to do something. So this is that's your how to or your demonstration speech. It's also fun. It's also fun, but let me know if you're going to do a demonstration speech. Please let me know what you're going to do. Now, if you're dealing with objects, objects are simple. They're straightforward. There's no muss, no fuss. Let's say, for instance, you're talking about how the gas stove started. The origins of the gas stove. You look at digital cameras. You're looking at the television. You're talking about pencils or pens, or when did we start having the cell phone? Those things are objects that have a history. So you're looking at the past, the present, and the future possibilities when it comes to things dealing with objects, because everything has a beginning. If you go back and if you get a chance to go back and look at that intro lecture, I'll tell you, in your toolbox, one of the first things that you have to look at is you've got to go back and you've got to look at, where did this come from? Everything has a beginning. Find out where it is and follow that from the beginning to where we are now, and what's the possibility of things happening in the future. That's what you want to look at. So when you're dealing with your objects, it may sound simple, may sound straightforward, and it is, but you also want to look at where it comes from. Look at that background, and it helps you have a deeper understanding of the topic that you're talking about. Now, your time limit is going to define how detailed you can go into your speeches. Now, for us, you have 3 to 6 minutes, no less than 3, no more than 6. So you have time to get in and, discuss your points, but you don't want to go so detailed that you lose your audience. Now, one of the drawbacks of dealing with informative speaking is the fact that you have a tendency to, with all the research that you do, you want to cram it all in your speech, and it can become so heavy and so dense that you lose your audience because you are knee deep in research. So you want to make sure that you pick and choose the most relevant, most pertinent information and interesting information to keep your audience involved in the speaking process. Now, if we're talking about procedures, that kind of goes back to the one we did before, right? So it describes how something works, or a process that produces a particular outcome. Baking a cake, changing a tire, painting a wall, framing a picture, whatever it is, describe how that something works and the process that produces a particular outcome. However, what happens a lot of times in this particular type of demonstration speech is we get so caught up in the how-to that we forget to give the information that goes along with it. When did this particular tool become part of the process? Who was the first person to bake a pound cake, which goes back to George Washington's wife, Martha Washington? She's the one who was supposed to have done the first pound cake, which was more like a fruit cake, more so than a pound cake. So think about it. So so is German chocolate cake actually German? Anybody know?
No idea.
No idea, right? Well, guess what? German chocolate cake is not German. It is actually an American invention using German chocolate. How about that? But I had to go back and research that, because all my life I always thought German chocolate came from what? Germany, and they brought it over. So when you're dealing with these types of situations, you want to make sure you know what you're talking about, which is why the research is really important. Okay? So we have our examples. Now, if you're dealing with biographical information, you don't have to tell every single thing about the person. He got up, he lay down, she went outside, she ate lunch, she ate a sandwich, it was a bologna sandwich. She even had lettuce on the bologna sandwich. What does that have to do with the person, unless that is relevant to who this person is and why this person is important enough for you to want to do an informative speech about that person? So we need to make sure that you find the most interesting information and relate that information to a specific for a specific purpose. In other words, if you're going to talk about certain things about a person, make sure that it fits into where you want the audience to go when it comes to their knowledge of this person. Okay. Questions so far? Okay. All righty. Next, let's talk about topics. So topics could be about events, ideas, like time management, evolution, freedom of speech, why we celebrate the 4th of July, why we do what we do in certain parts of society. All of those can be considered topics for speeches. It's just what you're interested in. So I bet you're thinking, is she going to choose our topics for us? No, I will not choose your topic for you, because I'll give you a topic like dirt or eggs or the importance of fungus. So you want to make sure that you pick your own topic, because I want you to be excited about the topic that you choose. Okay? So same information here when it comes to topics. If you're talking about events, when did the event first happen? If you're doing a presentation about ideas, example, if you're talking about time management or evolution or freedom of speech or whatever you're talking about, the First Amendment, whatever it is, go back and look at it. Go back and figure out where it comes from. What's the historical significance of this? How has it played a role in society? Why is it interesting to you? And why is it that you want everybody else to know about your particular topic? Okay. Now that we've talked about, understanding the difference between informative and persuasive, because remember, informative is to enlighten, to give new knowledge, to inform, or if you want to put it like that. You're not trying to persuade, where persuasion is to do what? To garner favorable consideration for your point of view, to change someone's mind, to modify some values, beliefs, and attitudes. That's not what we're doing here. We're just here to enlighten the audience, and by giving them new knowledge. And we understand that by doing so, we are doing what? We are bringing about a change, but it is an outcropping of the knowledge, not the primary reasoning for the knowledge that we're given. So let's look at some techniques of informative speaking. Now, there are 2 questions that I want you to take with you. Even though it says precedes the thesis statement, the informative purpose statement, I'm not worried about the purpose statement. I want you to use these 2 questions to figure out how you want to approach your topic. What is your speech going to do? It's going to enlighten my audience. It's going to demonstrate. It's going to do what? So that lets you know, what are we doing? And then what will my audience walk away with? My audience should walk away with a deeper understanding of the First Amendment. My audience should know how to register to vote. My audience should know that college, choosing a college is very important. Whatever it is, that's what you want to ask yourself. What is your speech going to do? Give new knowledge, demonstrate, discuss, and what will my audience walk away with? A deeper understanding of how you'll learn how deeper, more knowledge about eating healthy. Whatever it is, those 2 statements need to be at the top of your list when developing your speech. Okay, you want to create information hunger. Now, because this informative speech is so information rich, you've got to give your audience a reason to listen to what you have to say. So you've got to make sure that what you pull out and give your audience is juicy enough for them to want to sit there and lean forward and listen to you talk. So how do we do this? You got to make it easy to listen to. I know when I was in college, I had some professors that call themselves being really, really interesting, and they would just bore me to tears. And I would just want to sit in class and cry, because they made it so hard to listen to, because they were so caught up in the lingo of their area that it sounded great to them, but they weren't taking into account their class. Who's listening to them? So Make it interesting to listen to. Watch for information overload. So you're going to choose roughly three to five main ideas. For us, roughly three, because if I have a 6-minute speech, you don't want to go beyond 5 main ideas of conversation. That's a lot. That is a seminar. That's an hour-and-a-half seminar if you have 5 major ideas to discuss, main points. So 3 is the magic number for us. Okay, you want to use information and examples that connect with the audience. You got to make sure, especially when you're doing audience analysis, which is what a systematic way of understanding your audience. You want to make sure that the examples that you give them are relevant and can connect to them. And you can use yourself, your personal experience, as a way to let the audience know that, hey, I'm not just telling you something about this. This is something that I'm interested in. This is something that has happened to me. This is something that I've witnessed. And it helps the audience go, oh, okay, I get it. I see this means something to you as well. Okay. You want to use simple information and build up to complex ideas. One of the biggest mistakes that we make as speakers is that we automatically assume that our audience has the same knowledge base that we do. Now, if that were the case, would they need to listen to what you have to say? And that may be a no, because they already know it. So what you want to do is not talk down to your audience, but figure out that happy medium. Because if I want my audience here, then I've got to bring them here. So how do I do that? Well, I start with simple information and build up to the complex. And let's talk about how we do that. Now, to do that, you may want to emphasize important points like repetition or using signposting. Now, one of my favorite speakers, I just have to say it, was Martin Luther King, because that's my generation. That's what I grew up. I'm old now, okay? And I grew up listening to a lot of his speeches. I didn't get a chance to listen to him live, but over time, and listening to my parents talk about him. One of the coolest things that he would do, he understood his audience, because in his audience, he had people who had PhDs and MDs and JDs, but he also had people who may have had some college or some high school, or may have graduated from high school, may have only had a 9th grade education, or may never have gone to school. He knew that he had a rainbow or a virtual plethora of different knowledge levels that he had to reach. So what did he do? He would take, let's say, for instance, he would quote Gandhi. And he would take Gandhi and he would sit there and say, this is this. And those who are PhDs and JDs and MDs, they would say, okay, I understand Gandhi. And some people who had college would go, okay, I understand Gandhi. But some people who did not have any education would say, who's Gandhi? So what he would do is he would break it down. So he would take that one thing and make it palatable for his whole audience. So then you had grandmothers and uncles and aunties going home saying, well, Gandhi once said. And like, Nanny, how did you find out about Gandhi? Well, Dr. King said, this is what he said, and this is what it meant, which made it interesting and made it easier, more palatable for his audience to get to understand his message in a lot of instances. So he would use repetition. And most speakers would do repetition. That's rewording important points. Okay, this is important. I really want to listen to this. Take note of this. Okay, I got something I need you to listen to. So that's repetition. Then you have signposting. So signposting are words and phrases that emphasize the importance of what you're about to say. So in literature, you'd call that what? Foreshadowing. So you would have words and phrases that lets them know that there's something coming down the road that you want them to listen to. And that's a way of drawing your audience in and get them to lean forward and lean into listening to what you have to talk about. And that's really important that you're able to do that. Make your message clear. Now, I'm gonna tell you, here's a secret. If you are the speaker and you're speaking to the audience, it is a good practice to switch positions and put yourself in the audience position to figure out, if I was listening to this for the first time, would I understand it? And a lot of times what we think is clear may be as clear as mud. So you have to be careful about how you put your speech together. So be aware of what you intend to communicate. Would this sound clear if you heard it for the first time? So remember, not everybody has your same knowledge base. So figure out, let me put myself in the audience. If I'm listening to me say this speech for the very first time, does it make sense? And if it comes back, no, then that lets you know you got to go back to the drawing board. Don't throw it away. Just figure out a different way to say it. So make it clear, make it concise. You don't have time to go around the garden. You want to sit there and take the path through the garden. So far, so good? Any questions so far? Okay. Y'all will probably sleep, but that's okay. Alrighty, so you want to make the presentation interesting. And look at everything that goes underneath that. Relate to your audience interests. Create interesting presentation aids. Use humor. Humor works. I'll tell you a story. And it's one of the most embarrassing stories of my life. So you're like, oh, wow, she's going to tell something embarrassing. Yes, I am. I had to give a presentation for a governmental grant. It was my boss at the time, Dr. Cherry Gooden, and Mr. Norris McVeigh and I. We went to Washington, D.C. for what was called FIPSI, for a $500,000 grant that we had back in the day. We were one of the few HBCUs to ever receive this grant. Well, anyway, we practiced and everything. So I did not take time to center myself to get ready to speak. So what did I do? So when it was my turn to speak, I just jumped up there and I started speaking. And would you believe I said 30 seconds of gibberish? My words did not make sense. And I had to step back for a second and go, oh my God, what happened? So one of my colleagues had to jump in and said, Miss Anderson will be back in a moment. Give her a moment. And I had to get myself centered. And I was like, well, okay. That lets you know, you better make sure you have your stuff together because you never know what's going to happen. So yes, I was beet red and I was embarrassed, but I learned a lesson. You've got to I had to make myself the butt of the joke to alleviate the tension, to alleviate my embarrassment. And also put the audience at ease to let them know that everything is okay. So humor works. Use humor to make a point. I was the butt of a joke. Or if you can use some humorous quotations if the speech calls for it. Now, if you're talking about a serious speech, don't sit there and drop something funny in there. Like, okay, if we're talking about date rape, there's no joke that goes along with date rape, okay? Alrighty. Now, as in writing an essay, you have your intro, your body, and your conclusion. Your intro tells your audience what you're going to say. You want to establish audience interest. You're going to have your preview statement and your thesis statement. You want to make sure that that's there so you can tell the audience what's going on. But for us, there are 4 parts to your introduction: your attention getter, your credibility statement, your thesis statement, and your preview statement. We're going to go over those when we look at the outline. Okay. Now, in the body, discuss your main points. If I've given a preview, I told you I'm going to talk about my thesis statement, and my preview statement tells the audience how I plan on discussing my topic. Then in the body, you got to say it. 3 points of discussion. Use your transitions to let the audience know that you're moving from one piece to the next. Don't just jump around. And you want to order your points in a way that it's easy to understand and to remember. That's that logos part of it. Logos, the organizational part of it. Okay, the logic. How do I put this together to make sure I get maximum impact from my audience, or so my audience can understand what I have to say and are able to follow me throughout the process. Okay. Finally, you have your conclusion. Tell your audience what's been said. You're reviewing, you're reminding, and you're providing the audience with a memory aid. Now, one of the biggest mistakes that we make as speakers is that we still have all this information left over. I didn't get a chance to talk about it in the intro. I didn't get a chance to talk about it in the body. I'm going to put it all in the conclusion. Don't do that. Do not backload your speech. Do not front load your speech. You want to sit there and distribute your information as evenly as possible. Juicy information to get your audience's attention. You want to wet their information. You want to have that really good information in the body to keep their audience interested, and then go back and remind your audience of that good stuff that you gave them in the body and in the introduction. Your intro is not long, and your body is not, and your conclusion is not long. Okay, you're dealing with maybe 50 seconds in your introduction and no more than 30 seconds, no more than 30 seconds in your conclusion. So you've got to pick and choose wisely what you want to say in your intro and your body. You don't have a 3-minute introduction and then 1-minute discussion and a 5-minute conclusion. That's not going to work. Okay. So if you want to look at other ways to bring your audience in, you may want to look at audience involvement. Get your audience involved in the speaking process. Eventually, when we go back to face-to-face classes and you're still doing your presentations, you want to make sure that you look at the level of commitment and attention that listeners devote to a speech. It's that audience involvement. You want to personalize your speech, use audience participation, volunteers, have a question and answer period. You can do those things. You can have a Kahoots quiz that you want to do. Whatever it is that you find that's going to get your audience to pay attention to you, you do it. So that way, the audience knows that you're willing to do whatever it takes to get your audience to listen to you and do so ethically. Okay, that's that ethos. Okay. Now, how do y'all feel about that so far? Questions?
About how long would you say the body needs to be compared to the intro and the conclusion? Like, would you say it's like if you had like a 7-minute speech,
Mm-hmm.
How long would the body need to be compared to the other?
Okay, I got you. That's a good speech. I mean, it's a good question. So if you think about, if I'm saying that in the intro, you have no more than 50 seconds to a minute, because anything longer than that, you're giving the speech. And you're doing your conclusion at 30 to 40 seconds, which is a recap of what you discussed. And we're going to talk about how to break that down. Then if I'm looking at a minute and 30 seconds for your intro and your body, and your intro and your conclusion, the rest of that time should be spent in the body. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm giving you guys 6 minutes to do the speech, and to give you an opportunity to get your speech, your intro done, and have time for your discussion in the body, and then bring us to a smooth conclusion. All right. Okay. Any other questions about that so far? Okay. All righty. Last thing. All right, I'm going to share my screen again for outlining. Okay. There we go. All right, can everybody see this? Do I need to make it a little bit bigger?
Looks good.
It's good? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, this is the annotated one, so that way you can go back and look at it, but I have a clean one out there for you as well. This is the only one that I will accept. Alrighty, so please make sure you use this outline. All you got to do is back out the information and then put in your new information. Okay. Now, let's walk through this together. So you have your title, of course. Your general purpose is global warming. That's the overarching theme of what the speech is about, generally about. Your specific purpose: to inform, to enlighten, to demonstrate, to provide additional information to just let you know. So I'm going from the general to the more specific. All righty. So you want to have your specific purpose is to inform the audience about the problem of global warming, if that is your topic. Next, you want to sit there and put your thesis statement at the top so that way it keeps you focused. So now your thesis statement tells the audience exactly what you're going to talk about. It is a simple sentence. It's not a paragraph. It's not a litany. It is just one simple sentence, compound or complex sentence, one that tells the audience exactly what you're going to talk about. So Kyle, this is the breakdown like we were talking about before. You have your introduction, no more than 50 seconds, depending on your topic, a minute at the most, because you want to make sure that it's cohesive and not choppy, but your audience can understand it and give your audience an opportunity to get into what you're trying to talk about. So first things first, let's break down the introduction. You have your attention getter. It does exactly what it says it's going to do. It helps to get the audience in the mood to listen to you. So it's a story, it's an anecdote, it's statistics, it's a study, it's whatever you need to put there to sit there and grab your audience's attention. That's what it is. You want to get it, and so they go, what? Oh, it's almost like hitting them in the head or popping them on top of the head. Hey, listen to what I'm saying. The next one is your credibility statement. Your credibility statement is your I statement. This is what connects you, the speaker, to the material that you're giving to your audience. Okay. So if you look at the example now, I am what you may call a person who loves the outdoors. That's the I statement. It also kind of gives a rationale as to why you want to do this particular speech. Remember, I'm not trying to persuade you. I'm informing you. Okay. I'm letting you know. I just think this topic is really important, and we all need to understand a little bit more about the loss of the forest that we have, the loss of the trees that we've got, the deforestation that's going on. Next, you have your thesis statement, which we talked about before. Today, I want to discuss global warming and its causes. Now, this is an exemplar. Use your own words for developing your thesis statement. I don't want to hear, today I want to talk to you about global warming and its causes. Use your own words. Rework the thesis statement to fit your speaking style. All right. And now the fourth part of the introduction is your preview. Just like you have coming attractions at the movies, this is what the preview statement does. It tells you, or it lets you tell the audience exactly how you plan on approaching the topic. Okay. Your attention getter gets your audience's attention. Your credibility statement is your I statement, lets the audience know why this topic is important to you. Your thesis statement tells the audience exactly what you're going to talk about. It's one sentence. It's not a litany. And then your preview statement is telling the audience about the coming attractions you plan on discussing, or how you plan on talking about your topic in the body. Okay. Now, let's look at the body. When it comes to outlining, the rule of thumb for outlining is for every 1, there is a 2. For every A, there is a B. Okay? It's important that you understand that. That's why I like doing this, because it lets you know whether or not the topics that you're discussing or your main points that you want to discuss. Can somebody mute? I'm getting some background. Okay. Thank you. It lets you as the writer or the developer of this speech see exactly where your strengths and your weaknesses are. If you have a 1, but you don't have a 2, then I says, okay, maybe I need to do some more research. If I have an A and don't have a B, I need to do some more research. Or maybe this is just a talking point under a different area of my speech. Okay. So if A is your main point of discussion, the large A here, capital A here, this is your main point of discussion. Your supporting details are your 1 and 2. These 2 things hold up the main point. You see that? Now, you can get as detailed as you want to, because you can have supporting details that support your supporting details. Let's say, for instance, you're talking about carbon dioxide traps heat. Here could be how carbon dioxide traps heat, which still fits this, which still fits this, which still fits this. See how that works? Okay. It's important also that you learn to verbally cite your sources. I know we hate verbally citing our sources because we hate to talk. It'd be easier if I were to sit there and say, write an essay, and we'll take that as a speech. Then you would give me every source I need. You'd sit there and do everything that needed to be done, and you would turn it in, and you'd be extremely happy when you did that. But unfortunately, or fortunately, this is a speech class. So there are no essays to be turned into me. The only thing that I want from you will be your video and your outline and your works cited page. Okay. For this class, I did say, well, we'll talk. I'll discuss that at a different time. Let's go ahead and get through this. All righty. So when we're talking about verbally citing your sources, like if you look at number 1, it says, according to Dr. David Union, a leading researcher in the field of climatology, he defines global warming as the gradual warming of the earth from human activities. And then you have your APA in-text citations. So in order for you to be considered credible, that's an ethos, it's going to be important that you do what? Verbally cite your sources throughout your speech. Like you write them, that's the way you'll speak them. Okay, even if you're using the same resource maybe twice, go back and use that same format. You can sit there and say, David Union goes on to tell us that. In another article written by Dr. Union, he states that. Further in that article, Dr. Union, he says that. Go ahead and do that, because remember, it's all about the credibility of the information that you give. Because if you're cynical, like most audiences are, they're going to sit there and think that you made it up. And that's not who we are as scholars, right? We give scholarly work because we are communicologists. So looking at this particular outline, using just this part as a teaching tool from the title to the general purpose, the specific purpose, your introductory thesis statement, to your 50 seconds to 1 minute when it comes to developing your introduction. That's that D, because I'm going to give you DDS, develop, discuss, and summarize. You develop, i.e. introduce your topic to your audience in the introduction. You 2D, D, discuss in detail your main points in the body. And then finally, when we get to the conclusion, you summarize everything that you've said. So in this particular speech, there are 4 main points of discussion. You can take one of those points out, since I said we only need 3 for our purposes, okay? So when it comes to the conclusion, you're going to summarize. Your summary statement is a combination of your thesis statement and your preview, restated. Go back and pick up that interesting information that you want your audience to listen to remember. And then you want to have some snappy closing remarks. You want to leave your audience with something to remember. All right, for this one, we said former President Al Gore tells a story on how global warming can sneak upon us. Addressing the National Academy of Sciences, the vice president said, if dropped into a pot of boiling water, a frog will quickly jump out. If that same frog is put into a pot of water that's slowly heated, the frog will stay put until boiled alive. So it is with pollution. If we do not wake up to the slow heating of our environment, we'll jump too late. And it goes on to say, we'll be cooked alive. Like, wow, okay. So leave them with something to remember you by. Only you can prevent forest fires. Brush your teeth every day, whatever it is. Leave your audience with a memory aid so they can remember the information that you've given. So remember, if you see how this is, we're not backloading our speech. Okay, we're not trying to put a bunch of information that we forgot to say in the body. We're not front loading our speech by putting a bunch of information in the introduction, which is pretty much a speech unto itself if you do it that way. So you take your time, edit. You've got to practice your speech at least 6 times to have a good feel for it, and edit as you go. Edit as you go. And here's your reference page. We're using it as APA style. So whether you're using a reference, a bibliography, or works cited, they're all the same. But for us, it's APA style. And if you look in the module Intro to Speech, there is the 2019 APA citation guide I have out there for you. So that way you know how to cite your sources and how to do your works cited page. Okay. Questions?